am very proud to introduce a martial art legend in his own right, someone who understands what it is to walk in the path of a warrior, and who's from an era that's lost. It was the golden age of martial arts. Took place in Los Angeles, where all the greatest martial artists probably in history all got together and came together at one central point from all different styles. And one of them was a gentleman by the name of Ark Wong. Sifu Wong brought Kung Fu literally to the United States. He was one of the oldest practitioners, and I'm very honored today to introduce Richard VERA.
Thank you.
Who is the inheritor of his system, and had the privilege of training with Ark when at the time I was a young kid, and I'd hang outside the school and look inside and be envious of you in there. And
I didn't see you.
No, I'm a ninja, man. You don't see us. But no, I had Rick Robinson and some friends I would meet down there. But I only saw Mr. Wong a couple of times in my life. But I did take some pearls of wisdom by watching what he was doing in the conditioning part. I remember him taking I think it was like a tennis ball or handball, and he would put it in the hands, and I would just watch him just squeeze it till like it looked like a little lemon, and then come back out and squeeze it. And Richard, I really would love for you to kind of share with us your experiences, what it's like to be in that position where your master is passed on and you're taking over, and especially, not being, of Occidental descent, not being someone who's considered an outsider. What that was like for you? What are your tribulations? What do you go through?
Well, starting there as a beginner when I was 17, we just did every day, and I started off as a student like everyone else. Now, as his grandson started to fall away from the actual teaching of Ark Wong's classes, he had to, pick somebody to help him out, and he picked myself and two others. And the other persons, their name was Alfred Martinez and another person named Alex Hullab. Okay, and we would help out every day. In fact, he said, if you work for me, I teach. So we would train after work or after school, teach us classes till 9, and then we'd have to go back from 11 o'clock till 1 in the morning, to train. And this was daily, every day except Sunday.
Wow.
Now, teaching his classes was wonderful. A lot of wonderful people, a lot of wonderful kids. I love working with the kids. And it just went on.
When you used to teach, do you find that through his teachings you'd find new insights by teaching?
Well, sometimes he spoke in riddles, so you really didn't know what he was saying half the time. But teaching is where you actually learn about your martial art. Right. When you work your way up from a beginner level on to, I guess, instructor level, which is black belt, obviously. Basically, you just gain all of your tools.
Right.
And then we go to college, and college, I guess, would be teaching. And when you actually have to pass this thing on, and interpret it, right. That's where you really, at least in my opinion, you really actually learn about your martial art. Right. And then learning about your martial art, you learn to pass it on. So.
No, what was it like? I mean, as a grandmaster, with him looking over, you would teach your students, and would he come in and correct the student, or would he correct you to correct the student? Okay,
actually, correcting an instructor in front of the students was like against the law.
Right.
Okay, but as far as correcting students, he would come out sometimes more than periodically, and actually run the classes here and there. But basically, he came out and he taught the literal self-defense. Right. We were responsible for the formal exercises in their order. Right. And he would come out periodically and, I teach you to fight now. Come here, come here.
Gotcha.
One of us would end up on the floor.
Of course. Of course.
But he was always gentle. He never took advantage of anybody. He also loved children. And for all of his crustiness, he was a wonderful man.
What was your favorite memory of him?
My favorite memory of him? That's a hard one because I was there for like 17 years, like 7 days a week. But
share a couple that you think are really fun.
Okay. My favorite memory was, first of all, he never allowed anybody to take a picture with him. And we were not allowed to compete. And I used to sneak off and go compete. And my wife at the time and we went down to Mexico. I used to represent the Taimanta school as far as competition. Okay. I always said he was my teacher, but I always represented the Taimanta school. And we went down to Mexico, and we came back all first place. I mean, we wiped the board. And when we came back, it was on a Sunday. I was supposed to work that day. And I walked in with 2 trophies, and he looked at me and says, "Where'd you get those?" And I said, "Well, Sifu, you know, I went to Mexico." And he gave me a dirty look. And my wife had her camera, and she pulled out the camera, and he never wanted to take a picture, but he was forced to. And I put my arm around him, and he looked at me, and he said, "Don't ever touch me." And my wife took the picture. In fact, I gave Mr. Gordon Robertchusa, who I thank for all of his wonderful articles, you know, he has a copy of that picture.
Awesome.
And that's about that about tops the cake.
So for you, it was more like a tough love. It was sort of like
training was everything. You know, yeah. If you couldn't do this, if you couldn't do that, he was an old-fashioned, crusty, traditional teacher. You know, he would have these little bamboo poles every now and then. Yeah. You know, and stuff. See, we were taught privately. What we were taught and what we were supposed to teach in the school was the curriculum, but we were taught personally by him every night.
Yeah, I noticed when a teacher, especially in China, Japan, I noticed that you could always tell if a teacher loved his students by the almost treating them in a mean-spirited way. Whereas the ones who were kind of, "Oh, you're doing great," and they'd walk away, those are the ones they never cared about. Mm-hmm.
You got that very, very correct.
And that's one of the things that really, you know, was a hard lesson for me to learn, to see that. I remember in my own situation, my instructor, Jack Seki, passed me off to, Senzo Tanaka. It wasn't, I mean, I didn't realize till there was the greatest act of love he could ever do for me. It wasn't that he was...
It takes a while to understand, huh?
It did. It took me a long time.
Yeah.
And the reason I'm bringing it up is because, you know, it took me 30 years to find out that was his father.
Wow.
Okay? I didn't even know it. Mm-hmm. And I was wondering, did you have anything where you were taught something that you felt maybe that you were picked on, or something not was unfair that you later found out it was really just something done for love?
Actually, being very young and impressionable, I have a lot of respect, you know, for the Oriental cultures and their way of life. And Wang Sifu said, "Don't ask, just do." You know, just do. And it was painful. It was painful. Fortunately, you know, like I said, there were 3 of us. I'm just the only one who finished. You know, but there were 3 of us, and they were hard workers just as I was, you know. And everybody has their skills, and eventually through attrition, you know, first, of course, somebody left, and then this guy left, and there I was, you know, so here I am.
Exactly.
Yeah,
exactly.
It's funny how time goes by so fast, you know, because, you know, you get up every day, you do the same things. Basically, our Southern 5 Animal System has been my life. Really, it's provided a good living for me. Working with the kids has taught me a lot about giving, period.
What was your first impression when you walked into that school the first day? Do you have any memories of what that was like?
Yes. Yes, in fact, I didn't think Wang Sifu was even the teacher. I thought he was a janitor. You know, really. I mean, well, he wore the black pants with the suspenders and a white shirt, and he'd walk around, you know, giggling and laughing all day long, and he had his grandson teaching the classes, so I figured, oh, that's Master Wang, you know, and after a while, you know, you found out that it wasn't. It was that little old man, you know, mopping the floor, you know, which was scary, actually. Yeah, but it was good. You know, once we got to know each other, it was okay. He never spoke very much, you know, but basically when he did, you know, everybody listened. So
exactly,
it was a good thing. You know, it was a good thing.
What do you remember the most of that era?
Of that era? The wonderful pleasure of doing something traditional and watching all of my friends and colleagues, you know, such as yourself, and other people actually being accepted as part of the clan or whatever it was, and being taught something real. Because there are a lot of martial arts schools now, you know, with basically uncredentialed teachers. And, you know, kids running classes and things like this, you know. So to be taught by the number 1, you know, was like, wow.
Exactly.
You know, it was something else, which also gave me a little bit more motivation also, because if you didn't make the grade, you know, he wasn't very happy.
Right.
You know.
Right. Would you find him a tough and fair teacher then, you'd say?
Well, the only way I could answer that is if I were Chinese, you know, because I really don't know how he taught his own people, but I know that it was hard. It was hard. It was not easy. And he had to, while we had to, what is called to live the legend, he says, don't do it halfway, all the way or no way at all. No halfway, you know, yeah. You know, my teacher can do this. That means you can do this. So you do this. And
Exactly.
that was it. You know, he kind of let you figure things out. Well, don't forget, you know, even though he could speak English, you know, it wasn't very well and very broken up. In fact, I used to interpret for him, you know, to the Hispanic community, because he also had a little clinic on the side there.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
What kind of a clinic?
Acupuncture and Chinese herbal medicine. Yeah, which enthused me to go to school. You know, I used to help him make his potions and his tonics, and
Wow.
I actually started doing acupuncture with him, you know, until I went to school. So
I bet you probably have a real good Tao formula.
I have several recipes, but the one that I use is in my opinion the best.
Yeah. And did you learn that from ARC? Or did you
Actually, it was a gift.
It was a gift?
Yeah. When I was passed on a skill called iron sand palm,
Mm-hmm.
you know, you needed to use a special kind of liniment and things. And
Right.
I used to buy it from him, but then, you know, after a while, he just handed me a piece of paper and took me to the herb store, introduced me to everybody there.
That's
You
amazing.
know, and
that's a true sign of passing the
you
legacy.
know, and stuff. Yeah.
You
In
know.
fact, I have his medicine book.
Really? Wow.
Yeah, before he died, a month before he died, you know, we met. It was Moon Day, and every Moon Day, according to Chinese tradition, you know, you get a basket of fruit with a boiled chicken, and you take it to your teacher, you know, and this and that, and this and that. And
And he instilled those traditions in you, didn't he?
yes,
Yeah, and
Yes.
you know, it's kind of interesting because I know all those traditions makes me feel very rich in my memories. You know.
yeah. In fact, sometimes I feel like I'm the luckiest guy in the world. It's just too bad that things well, martial arts is really going in a good direction, but then again, I always feel bad for like such as and myself, like a strict traditionalist.
Right.
Now it's a little bit of this and a little bit of that and a little bit of this and a little bit of that.
Well, the culture is being lost in some respects. I think there's something to be said for the ritual. You know, ritual helps you center.
Well, actually, you know, if you stay with one teacher long enough, you're going to learn all those things.
Yeah.
You know, and I mean, it just takes a longer amount of time. Because I've noticed, you know, looking at other martial arts, I mean, they're very well-rounded. They have good curriculums. They have good programs. But you got to be there a while to actually get into, I would say, the higher aspects of the martial art.
Yeah. Yeah, I think they start with a certain focus, and then they specialize in that, and they move on to different things. Like there's a lot of forms of traditional karate, and people don't even realize that actually karate did incorporate and teach grappling.
Yes.
When you got up to the higher levels. But unfortunately, you had a lot of people who, you know, they're 8th degree black belts when their instructors are 4th, if you know what I'm talking about.
Yeah.
Okay, and then when they go out there and they say they're 8th and they're being representative of their system,
Yes.
they haven't really learned what a 5th or 6th or 7th,
Yeah, wow.
which might be the grappling aspects, for example. And of course, you know, it looks stilted. Their system looks stilted. It looks like it's just a narrow focus.
Yes.
It isn't.
Yeah.
And, you know, that's one of the advantages, I guess, that we have is sticking with certain systems that are long.
Well, our advantage is learning from an authentic
Yeah.
martial art teacher. Everybody else is basically a student of a student of a student of a student.
Yeah.
You know, and you were talking about masters and things, and
Right.
Wang Sifu always said there is no such thing,
Oh, no.
because once you think you know everything, you haven't learned a thing.
Right.
You know,
Pause
you
there
know.
for just 1 second. And let me hear how that sounds differently. Keep going.
Okay, like I was back to what I was saying, just like the term sensei or sifu, I mean, it's greatly misconcepted, and you have to bow and, you know, oh, mighty master. And both the words, Japanese and Chinese, mean teacher,
Absolutely.
not master.
Oh.
You know, and that's another thing, that kind of gets to me, Now, such as yourself, with all of your experience, you've mastered your martial art. Basically, you've mastered yourself.
Right. Well, that's what, to me, martial arts is really that. It's a study of master of yourself.
Yeah, we learn about ourselves.
And we train to be better than we were yesterday. That's the reason we do it.
Took the words right out of my mouth.
So,
yeah.
And that's what kind of drives me and drives me forward. What was the, was there any kind of like feuds going on at that time with ARC and anybody that you could remember? Any stories that you could put to rest
as far as I know, feuds between the associations in Chinatown is basically a personal matter, and I never really got involved with any of that. That was Wang Sifu's business, and
right.
He was very involved in politics in the Chinatown area.
Right.
But as far as rival schools, our Southern Five Animal System School and Buxam Kong's Hung Boxing School,
right.
We were kind of rivals. And my ex-wife, bless her soul, was Buxam Kong's personal student. So we made an alliance,
Yeah.
That's
awesome. Yeah. Yeah, I know. The reason I brought it up is because even though it's like a certain rivalry, there's always that respect.
Yes.
Even though someone, in those days, it was sometimes they just had narrow focus. Like you'd walk into a Tong Sudo school and they say, "Oh no, you want to train with us? We're better because we'd go straight for you, and they're too flowery." But to me, it was I didn't see much sense in it. It was sort of like, for me, it was like going to different ice cream shops, or different restaurants.
Yeah. Well,
this one serves Mexican, this one serves Chinese, this one serves this one serves that, and it depends on what you're in the mood for at the time. Sometimes, and those guys became sort of masters of of nothing because
the masters of ego.
Yeah, exactly.
Actually.
And people who were really interested would go in for different purposes. Like I went into, one of the reasons I went and saw ARC is because he was so advanced with the Dit Gao. And I heard all these stories about it from the Thai fighters who would come to him.
Yes.
And a lot of people didn't realize that these Thai guys would come. They were winning and they were getting an advantage. At that time, I was sort of like a nomad, martial art nomad. I would go from school to school and learn. And most of the time I'd be outside looking in because I couldn't afford to go in.
Yeah.
But I've gotten to know you, Richard, by reputation.
Why, thank you.
As the years have gone on, because Rick Robinson, for example, a lot of people know that Rick Robinson, who trained with ARC, is the character who is the basis of the character Jackson in the movie Bloodsport.
Oh, okay.
He's one of the guys.
Okay.
And Rick was a biker. He used to run what they call the Poor Boys in Venice. You might remember him there. And that's where that whole character came from. But Jackson character is actually a mixture between him and a guy named Kurt Peterson, who was another Swedish karate champion, Kyokushinkai. So it's actually, the Jackson character is actually a composition of two people.
I see.
And but what's great about it is, of course, I got that connection going all the way back to ARC in that sense. This was my friend and also a fellow competitor, and I've heard many great stories from Rick about what it was like to train with him and be trained by him. And he said, and I don't know if he did this with you or not, but Rick said he would actually take a chopstick and just snap it on his neck. Like
I've seen him do some crazy things.
Yeah.
I've seen him
tell me about some of the crazy stuff you've seen him do.
The craziest thing I've ever seen.
Yeah.
The craziest thing I've ever seen. Okay, I had been there already a long time. My two colleagues that were my combative partners had already left. And we were learning these meditations, these sit-down postures, Qigong practice.
Right.
Okay.
And for those who don't know, Qigong is
spirit
intrinsic
work.
energy.
Spirit work.
Yeah, spirit or... Yep.
And he lit a candle about 10 feet away and walked me over about 10 feet away and stood there, and he says, if you do this for this amount of time, you will do this. And he pointed his finger at the candle, flipped his finger, and the candle blew out. I mean, it just didn't blow out. You heard it. It went,
pop. Amazing.
I cried. I was scared. Yeah. See, then I didn't know whether he was Chinese or from Mars, Well,
I can imagine.
But that was about the scariest thing. Yeah. The Iron Palm stuff, which I'm very fortunate. to.
What's the difference between an iron palm and, let's say, another kind of burning palm, let's say, technique?
To be honest with you, all I can compare it to is maybe the manner of training, and maybe the method of a breathing exercise or breathing meditation that is taught for that particular for that particular technique, because it's not a martial art, it's a technique,
Right.
and the equipment that they use,
Right.
and stuff. And Wong taught what is called an indirect method, both body, mind, and soul. It was like a physical and spiritual at the same time.
Really?
So we made like a balance and stuff. So
How would he cater to your spiritual side?
well, I've always been kind of overly friendly, and I'm not afraid to say hi or whatever. He didn't like that. But then again, and I mean, anybody who walked through the door who wanted to learn, if I wasn't doing anything, and I mean, just like when I met Gordon, and I mean, I just stopped what I'm doing, walk you in, sit you down, get you a glass of water, and
Right.
can I help you in any way? I was always more than willing to share what we had to offer there.
That's awesome. Did you ever hold anything back, or felt he held anything back from you?
Oh, actually, he died at 91, and I honestly feel I barely touched the surface with the 17 years that I spent with him, because he was so knowledgeable.
Really?
Yeah, he was a literal, veritable library.
It's kind of a shame too when you think about what's lost.
It was a shock when he passed, and I mean all of his students, including myself, the martial art world, who knew him, literally fell to their knees, and their mouths dropped to the floor, because even though he was 91, I mean, he was very, very active, very, very involved.
Yeah, huge resource.
Yeah, always had energy. Now that we're here, I've always heard about you ever since I was a kid.
Right.
In fact, we're the same age, so we were both kids.
Yeah.
And I was always in awe. And I mean, how did it feel to go over there and just win?
It was really interesting.
And I mean, you were up against the world.
I was, actually. They made me fight it 3 times because they refused to accept that a non-accidental,
See, well, that's even better. That's even better. I mean, beating them once was bad enough.
But to actually, before they would actually declare it, they made me fight it 3 times. The reason is, I mean, just the prejudices at that time were just unbelievable.
Yeah.
A lot of people take, I think, the equality we have today for granted. They don't realize, like the civil rights movement, people actually died trying to get, equal opportunity for people based on your race. And we grew up just at the very end of that. To witness it. I mean, I remember going to places, and it was, no blacks allowed, no Jews allowed, no dogs and Jews allowed. I remember seeing that in Paris one day in a store,
Wow.
And I went in, and I remember Benny Kiedis fought really great match with Godin in Hawaii. I'd fought there the month before. And Benny and me were really up for contention to go fight in the event. But I ended up getting selected for 2 reasons. One, John Keehan, who had fought the event representing the United States, fought for like 2 or 3 years prior to me, and I was part of his lineage, so I got selected. He passed away in May of 1975, and the event was held in November of 1975, and I fought Vic Moore, and Vic beat everybody. I mean, Vic beat Joe Louis, Chuck Norris, Mike Stone. I was the only guy he'd never beat, and he actually still to this day, in fact, was the thing.
He swears he won.
No, he absolutely used Vic to show you the humility of this man and how honorable this guy is. He actually said, of all his opponents, I was the toughest opponent he ever fought in his entire career.
That's very gracious of him.
It was exceptionally gracious of him, and of course he says, and he told me, he says, when I fought you in Texas, like we fought in Texas, he said, I knew that was the time I couldn't beat you. He said, that was the time I needed to retire. He said, I knew you were the up and comer. And so I went over, like we talk about and fought, and one of the things people don't realize is when I'm fighting there, to give you an idea of the prejudices were going on, forget just, Oriental versus,
Yeah, well, you were fighting their rules.
A Caucasian, okay? Or a Hispanic, or someone, the African American race, or whatever.
Yeah.
Forget all that. They had so much prejudice just amongst themselves. I mean, I would fight, And I'll give you an idea. I fought in a karate uniform.
Yes.
And all of a sudden they come out and say, Japanese style is better than, Chinese style. So the next time I fought, I made sure I wore a Chinese outfit. And it happens again. Chinese style, see, he's really Chinese, la, la, la. And I'm listening to this go on. So I go and wear a Korean thing. So I figure, well, maybe if I wear it between all 3 matches, I just wear one of each time and do a wardrobe change, it'll
Kung
stop.
Fu pants cut at the top.
Right, everything. It got to be so ridiculous. I'm listening to all this chatter going on. So finally I said, you know what? I went out, and you see this in the movie Bloodsport, but they never addressed the issue. Mm-hmm. And in the movie, I went out and I bought some bicycle shorts. And I had them embroider on my name, because the uniform has to have your name on it.
Yes.
Right? And I had them embroider my name on the bicycle shorts, and then I came out and fought with that.
Wow.
And that's why in the movie, the last scene, you see Jean-Claude fighting in these long bicycle shorts.
Wow.
Now, when I did that, my Korean counterpart, who in the movie is Chong Lee, he saw me, he thought I was getting a tactical advantage. So he ran out and he came in with like tie shorts. So
how can you get a tactical advantage wearing shorts?
He thought I had an advantage in the sense that he couldn't grab a gi, he couldn't do all that kind of stuff. That's why I did that. No, I did it because of the prejudice. I didn't care about the other stuff. It didn't matter to me. So, I mean, a lot of people don't realize, and then I set a whole new trend based on that, saying, no, this is not about martial art against martial art. This is about man against man. That's what this is about. It's not about Chinese versus Japanese, Korean. And it was kind of interesting. And as you probably remember, growing up in that era, when you were a teacher, you'd get calls, is the teacher Oriental or is he...
I've had that happen a couple of times, but not very often.
Yeah.
Not very often.
Yeah, but see me, when I had my school...
While you were competing out there, and I mean, you were out there.
Yeah,
so.
and people would call up, and that would be an issue. But it's one of the things. But it was a great feeling, to answer your question. It was a great feeling, but I never let it go to my ego. For me, it was always kind of a learning experience. And I was always afraid when I walked out there. I'm not afraid to say that.
Yeah, well, fear is good.
Oh, yeah. And I try to...
It teaches you things.
Oh, yeah. Well, and it's interesting. The reason I retired is when I lost my fear. When it became so mundane and ordinary for me, I stopped kind of training, and I walked out, and I won my match, and I go, you know what? It's time for me to leave. It says I don't have fear here anymore.
Was it like a quit while you're ahead kind of thing, or? It
was kind of a quit while you're ahead kind of thing, but it was also like I always challenged myself. That's why I had so many world records. Because I was never content. Okay, I'm world champ. Big deal. I want a world record. What can I make it? Oh, fastest punch. Let's do it. And I knocked out a guy. I think in my first matches were something like 12 seconds. And then later, by the end of my career, it was 3.2 seconds.
Okay, pause again, because this is what I want you to do. Let it go.
And but it was really kind of a challenge. And Richard, I know you're one of the few people in the world who can do this. And that's the actual death touch, where you can actually take a stack of bricks and select which one you want to hit in that stack.
Yes.
And so...
How many bricks have you...
Geez.
Your record?
My biggest one, 16.
16?
16 in a stack on the floor with no spacers.
Yeah.
And
all through 16, or did you pick
either way. I'll slap the wall. If you want them all, I'll slap the top and they'll all crack. Or what I used to do in demonstrations, I would have somebody in the audience come out with a piece of chalk and mark the ones they wanted to break.
Amazing.
And I'd slap the top, and only those would break.
Yeah. And that's a testimony, I think, to the training, and being taught by a really authentic teacher. I know I had the same the same thing, and I think it's the same, like you said. It's a sort of different methodology, the way you harness that energy.
It's a matter of chi. Well, it's a matter of energy.
Yeah, absolutely.
Exactly.
So wait a second, before we just not slip past this, because people are going to be watching this and have absolutely no idea what you're talking about right now. It's just by saying the word chi. So
intrinsic energy.
Yeah. What I want you to do is to say, well, exactly how do you accomplish such a...
Okay. All right. So let me ask you a question, Richard. And how exactly do you do this? I mean, it's not just biomechanics, obviously.
It's not mind over matter. A lot of training. the proper meditations, the proper diet, and a lot of people are always looking for this Chinese secret. And to be honest with you, after all these years of teaching and everything, a spirit martial art such as an iron palm exercise, my secret is age. Okay, you have to start during puberty, before you expel that energy. Now, as far as getting the bricks done, a visualization, your concentration is so clear that I can actually see the ones that I want to break. And when I slap the top, thank God, those are the ones that break.
Right. Right.
Interesting. And it just takes a while.
So it's not a muscle memory thing. It's something that's going on within you.
The training,
the
conditions the hands.
Right.
The mind wills the energy. Right. The mind sends the blood to the necessary area. But the stronger the visualization. Yeah, Wong Sifu would say, if you can see it here, it becomes real, and it becomes here. That's just like you. You wanted to be a champion. You saw it in your mind. Right. You went after it, and you did. We're just looking at two sides of the coin.
I really believe in visualization. I think it's a very important part of martial arts training, the meditation. It's unfortunate, though, as a skill and as an art form in itself, it's being lost. Just like the Ki. People don't realize it, but you can actually defeat someone just using a frequency that you can generate through your body.
Yes.
And that is an art form in itself that's being lost.
A lot of tradition is being lost, but life is a circle, and even though martial art is going the way it is now, which is actually, I think, is in a good direction, because you have all these versatile fighters that are bigger and stronger, which also says that humans are going up the evolutionary chain.
Oh, sure.
But everybody goes back to tradition. And if you look at a lot of the MMA fighters now, UFC or whatever have you, a lot of them are credentialed in a traditional martial art of their favorite.
Oh, yeah. Absolutely. Well, you got to start somewhere. I mean, it's the techniques actually work, and it's proper training. The reality is all martial arts, in my opinion, is connected, because we all are, bound by the constraints of the human body.
Well, we are all brothers, in a martial art.
Exactly. Well, in life, if we think is really interesting, a real change, is the emergence that it's no longer a gender-dominant event. You see lots of women. It used to be, when I used to have my schools, 3-4 women tops out of maybe 400 students.
Now it's about 50-50 now.
Yeah, it's incredible.
Which is good. I mean, women have come a long way, and they've done a really good job. And in fact, I mean, I wouldn't fight a woman. Heck no.
Well, let me ask you a question. Here's a good. I think it's a kind of a good one. Martial arts, especially the kung fu you do, it's based a lot on lowering your center of gravity.
Yes.
Now, with women having already a built-in lower center of gravity than a male, genetically, and I mean, from a kinesiology point of view as well, do you find that they actually excel and actually have an advantage over the males, pound for pound, when they're doing something?
I'm going to tell you the truth. I've been teaching for about 35 years now, and every program I've ever had, the women are always better than the men. They got better attitudes. They learn faster. They're not as humble, and as far as woman rivalry, they kind of keep it away from the dojo, really. Whereas men, and I mean, it's like two roosters walking around, Right. Two tigers can't live on one mountain.
Right.
So, but I find that women are more eagerly, accepting, a martial art discipline.
So you think it's more of a visualization and a more of a behavior thing, or do you think it's more of a actual physical thing that makes them better?
I think they got a better attitude.
It's the attitude.
I think they got a better, they're more open-minded about things.
So you don't think it's like the lower center of gravity gives them an advantage?
No, because some women are taller than men. And I mean, whether it's whether they have a lower center of gravity genetically or not, and I mean, if she's taller, and I mean, geez, but I just think.
But I'm saying pound for pound. If you took them, comparatively, a man and a woman, okay, of the same height, same weight, all right, and you were to theoretically teach your system, do you think because of the lower center of gravity a woman is born with?
I think a woman would do better.
Yeah.
Yeah, personally, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. I have a woman private student now, and she's like excelling, like, and I mean,
Right.
it's like wow,
Now, do you think that's the reason you see more women, like in the Chinese systems, like developing their own systems, as a result of that? Like Wing Chun, for example, was developed by a woman.
Yes.
Do you think that's the reason you don't see it in the Japanese styles? Maybe.
Some of it I would call necessity, because we live in a world, that's not very nice
Right.
in some parts.
Mm-hmm.
But mostly they're just interested. Now, a Chinese Kung Fu is more of a demonstrational type. Well, when you get to the formal exercises,
Right.
so it's pleasing to the eye.
Right.
Whereas a harder style, a Japanese style is very rigid. Now it's pleasing to the eye too, but then you're looking at two different concepts, and I honestly think it would depend on the female person, whether she wants to do this or whether she wants to do that.
Yeah.
But they're coming up,
Mm-hmm.
and we're going to be outnumbered pretty soon if we're not careful.
Oh yeah. Oh, yeah. So I think you see it in film too. I think it's
A lot.
I think that's the interesting thing. When we were growing up, it was always the damsel who had to be rescued. Today, it's more the woman rescues the guy, and she's dominating the situation.
Well, personally, I'll let her rescue me any day.
I think he was looked down upon because he taught non-Orientals.
Yes. The political people in Chinatown did not really like the idea of him opening his doors to America.
Right.
But I remember him talking about it once, and he says, China, it will always be in my heart. It will always be my home, but I live in
You
America.
would like to say, like in closing, Richard, do you think, or that you really feel that we didn't address, maybe you'd like to talk about?
Basically, I think we covered all of your questions. I just encourage traditional martial art teachers to keep teaching. That's the only way we're going to stay traditional. A mix of here and a mix of there is pretty good, but I'm going to repeat what my teacher said. Old ways are the best ways. They are the foundation for the new.
Let me ask you a question. What was Ark's view on Bruce Lee, who actually...
Bruce Lee, he loved Bruce Lee.
Really?
He loved him. In fact, we used to watch his movies on the little TV he used to have on the stage, along with Kung Fu on Thursday nights with
Right.
David Carradine.
Yeah.
Sometimes he would go out there and we're not going to train today, and he'd turn on the TV, he'd buy everybody a soda, and we'd sit there.
Interesting.
And he'd giggle and laugh with all the rest of us.
That's awesome. That's an awesome thing.
Yeah.
But very interesting. I remember going in my jiu-jitsu class with Jack Secchi, and how I'd rush home to see the Kung Fu TV series.
Yeah.
I just had to get
Yep.
there. Can you get the class over quick? I want to get in there.
I just wanted to see Wong Sifu throw the star in the beginning of the movie. After
Yeah.
that, Kung Fu.
There you go. Actually, we should mention that he's the one in the movie throwing the stars. I don't think people know that.
Yeah, okay. Ark Y. Wong Sifu is the old man in the beginning of each series of Kung Fu with David Carradine. He's the monk that's throwing the 5-star weapon against the dartboard.
Fantastic.
No.
Fantastic. It's important that I think this generation know what we're talking about. And it's kind of good that way. Did he ever tell you what it was like working on the movie, or
He didn't say much.
never?
He was always he was always very, very private.
What's his history? This is the one thing I really wanted to get, as far as where he learned it from, and how
Wong
he
Sifu
trained.
started when he was 7 years old, and he learned from the chief monk of the town outside of Canton, China, and his name was Pang. P-A-N-G, high parts of the association. Like, I was with Wong Sifu for 17 years, and when we got to a certain age, you were just a member of the organization in Chinatown because you were his senior student. In fact, I was Wong Sifu's personal security also, too. And we were branded. I have my tattoos on
Can you show us?
on my arm. Geez, is it okay to take off my shirt?
Sure.
On camera? Okay.
I think it's important that they see what it really looks like. All
I
these
kind of keep
young
them
guys-
covered up, but
Yeah.
a
a lot of these young guys are running around and they just don't know.
Well. Jeez.
Okay.
Okay.
And that's what
Yep.
the real marks look like.
And these are and these are tappings. This one is a name. Okay, in Chinese. Okay, I was called no name because I'm not Chinese.
Right.
Or unknown soldier, the man with no name. It's pronounced Wu Ming Ying Shang. Okay, in Chinese. And because I inherited the systems, we were considered like guardians, and I was a personal security person who also got the name. And this one's pronounced Shou Dan Hao Dren, and it means guardian of light. Okay, now Chinese people, light is like knowledge, so basically I was branded as keeper of the system. And it's been that way ever since.
And it's an honor to meet you.
Frank,
I got to tell you, and to see that, that's an honor, because I know tradition is not to do it unless you're in the honor of another master, and I want to thank you for it.
Oh, well, thank you for inviting me, Shane. That's also great, a pleasure and an honor to meet you. I've been dying to get here, ever since I'm on a Frank's good to be there. Yay!
So,
You know?
my pleasure.